several top secret, possibly secure locations across South Texas. This is the Spurs Insider Podcast with a full crew again this week. I'm Mike Finger with Express News beat writer Jeff McDonald, who presumably has a polar pop. Tom Orsborn, who might have his salmon-colored coffee mug, and sports editor Nick Talbot. Since we last talked to you a week ago, there have been 4 games in 6 days, and we have absolutely nothing to talk about, right, guys?
It's a roller coaster ride for these Spurs, but they're acquitting themselves quite well, I think.
It seems like a lifetime of games. We did 2 podcasts before the restart started where we were talking about basically 4.5 months of nothing. And now all of a sudden we've had a week of the Spurs going in thinking they weren't going to be competitive for this playoff spot, or it looked from the outside like that was a long shot, to all of a sudden they were front runners for about a half an hour. And now they're kind of back in the pack again. It has it any of your expectations or kind of perceptions of what the objectives of this team are? Have they changed at all throughout this week, Jeff?
I think so. Because the last time we saw the Spurs playing games that mattered, they were sort of this slow plodding one-on-one DeMar DeRozan, one-on-one LaMarcus Aldridge type team, at least on the starting unit, and all that has been revamped. And now, I think that gives them a better chance to win in this bubble, and B, even when they're losing, they're competitive and exciting. So, when I thought about what the Spurs were when this hiatus started, they seemed like they had no chance. Now that you see them on the floor in this new configuration, you feel like they do have a chance. And all that said, it's not even the main goal of this restart for them to have a chance to win. They just want to be competitive and see what they've got in these young kids. And I think so far, even though they're 2-2, and I think that's been a wild success on that end of things.
It helps that Memphis hasn't exactly performed in the bubble either, where they're 0-4 and they lost Jackson, kind of opening things up for everyone that thought they had a shot or even a little bit of a shot.
Well, Memphis wasn't even thought to be who they were chasing to start out. It
right.
Seemed like the pack was going to chase for that 9th spot to have a chance to play Memphis in this new play-in configuration, and now it seems like both the 8 and 9 spots are open. And like Nick said, Jaren Jackson being out, that throws a whole new dimension into this. Portland playing well, even Phoenix, who came in like the Spurs, thought to be an afterthought. Can you be thought to be an afterthought? That might be kind of ridiculous.
The forethought was that they were the afterthought.
The forethought was that they were the afterthought.
Yeah.
These teams are all kind of in it. And Jeff used the terms earlier in his description of the first week as the Spurs looking competitive and exciting. And who would have thought that, even forget the win-loss record, the fact that they would look competitive and exciting, I think, is an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah, exciting is not a word that has been used to describe them in a couple of years, for sure. And the way the West is shaking out now, it's as you mentioned, like there's more. There's an extra spot now that is open for the playoffs, but there's more teams chasing it than we thought. I think it's down to like 6 teams vying for 2 spots, and I think that makes the whole thing exciting as well.
To review, I think most people who are tuning into this fine Spurs Insider podcast are aware of what's happened over the last week. But just to review, after the first 2 games, the Spurs actually controlled their entire NBA championship destiny. They went in from needing all kinds of help, and after winning the first 2 games, if they would have won the rest of their games, they would have been in the playoffs. Everything was in their control. A kind of a heartbreaking loss against Philly, where they made a huge comeback to take control of the game, be up by 4 in the final minute, and then that did not finish like they hoped. And then a similar situation with Who did they just play yesterday? Denver.
Denver.
A nice rally in the second half. Things started to come together, but there is a flip side, as Jeff kind of has pointed out in his Zoom interviews with Greg Popovich. Tom's pointed out, when you're playing the lineups the Spurs are playing, it's not all strawberries and cream. Like, it's not all upside. There are some caveats, and one of those is that it's a small lineup, and it's easier to rebound when you're taller.
That was to use my word from last week, trenchant. Like, that's excellent analysis.
Yes.
that you just.
I think I'm going to change basketball strategy forever with this revelation that it's easier to rebound when you're taller.
When Greg Popovich retires, you should put that on. That should be part of your interview when you interview for his job. They'll hire you in a second. Guys. Yes. Have you ever thought about signing tall guys? Like that? That's great.
Well, I mean, and this goes along with the idea that because that lineup of basically 4 guards played so well in those first 2 games of the restart, it was like, why didn't you do this all along? Why wasn't this flip switched earlier? That's a valid question, but I think that first of all, some of the guys who are in that lineup probably benefited from. I think they're in a better position to succeed now than they might have been in November. You also had a LaMarcus Aldridge issue earlier in the season where you couldn't just go to this because LaMarcus and DeMar wanted to play a certain way. I mean, there's all kinds of factors that go into choosing a lineup. Obviously, this is working, but it also has drawbacks when, as Popovich pointed out yesterday post-game, you have Nikola Jokic and Michael Porter Jr. basically standing flat-footed around these guys in the closing minutes, grabbing their own rebounds. There are issues to deal with when you play this lineup, and the Spurs are seeing kind of both sides.
Yeah, and Jokic
they had Rudy Gay guarding Jokic down the stretch yesterday. Like, Rudy Gay was the 5.
Right. And I mean, when you're lamenting not having Drew Eubanks, who's been great in the restart, when you wish you could get more minutes from him, and that's like one of the guys you're depending on to be your big post interior guy. I mean, you're kind of thin there, and we don't bring any of this up criticizing any of these guys because basically everybody on the team has been playing at or above their expected levels. I can't think of anyone during the restart who you could point to and say, wow, they need more out of that guy. It seems like everything has gone well for just about everyone.
I have one. Do you want to talk about one?
Okay.
Jakob Poeltl's been in like massive foul trouble like for several games, and that's a problem when he's the only guy taller than 7 foot on the entire roster.
Okay, but Jakob Poeltl also was one of the stars of the first 2 games, and I think if you had realistic expectations of what Jakop Poeltl was going to give,
I did not. I did not.
Well, I'm just
saying
he
was going to be a star.
Oh, okay. What? Okay, let's be serious.
He's had a murderer's row of big men to face, and then another one coming up tomorrow.
We're taping this on Thursday, by the way. Friday.
Yeah, you're right.
Is it Thursday? It's like 5 a.m. or something. Why do we have to get up so early for this?
I think because Ringo Starr has a gig at like lunchtime, and he needed.
I didn't think rock stars got up before noon. What's going on?
Ringo's aging.
This is the sober Ringo.
Ringo probably gets up several times during the course of an evening. I would assume. But anyway, yes, Jakob Poeltl. If you would have guessed what he would have given you through the first 4 games of the restart, and we gave you his stats and what he's done and how he's produced, I think he's exceeded expectations. But he is in a situation where he's basically the only post defender on the floor a lot of times, and it's hard to give him help when the 4 guy is also guarding someone who's too big. Like, didn't Derek White mention yesterday at every position on the floor, they were guarding somebody bigger than them?
Yes.
All 5 guys against Denver. So smart teams are going to go right at Pirtle early in a game and try to get him into foul trouble, because then you get to Drew Eubanks, and then if you get him in foul trouble, you're into Rudy Gay playing the 4 or Tyler Zeller.
It's been bad matchups for him too. You say go right at Jakob Pirtle, but I mean, Philadelphia is going to go to Embiid no matter who's guarding him.
Right.
Denver's going to go through Jokic no matter who's guarding. He's also guarding some of the best. There aren't a lot of like dominant centers left in the NBA, but it seems like poor Yak's getting them all here at once in Orlando.
Yep. So, what are you guys' kind of reviews of not just how this new look of the Spurs has performed, but just the kind of the prognosis for or predictions for how it could evolve or how it could continue, not only over these next 4 games, but is this something that they can kind of look to next season as well?
Well,
can I answer that with a question?
Sure.
What do you do with LaMarcus Aldridge?
Yes.
I think I had mentioned this maybe in the last podcast after this lineup was unveiled in the scrimmages, that LaMarcus could become the big guy in Pirtle's spot, Pirtle off the bench. But I think you run into similar issues there. And also, in a weird way, Aldridge might not be as great of a fit as the only big guy in this lineup as Jakob Pirtle is.
Well, yeah, it works because Jakob Pirtle's just sort of this guy that doesn't need the ball, does all the dirty work, sets the screens. I mean, he's just going to do what I think Pop used the term the other day. He does the cleanup duties, and that's not what you pay LaMarcus Aldridge for. So to me, it would be interesting. I mean, you're back to the same situation where you've got LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan in the same starting 5, both of them needing shots, and DeMar's done a good job of fitting himself into this configuration in not taking as many shots, picking his spots better, saving it for the fourth quarter, that sort of thing. I don't know that LaMarcus can do that. So to me, that's going to be the interesting thing going into next year is if this is how you want to play, how does your highest paid player fit into that?
Go ahead, Tom.
Oh, I was just thinking about the tweet that you had the other day regarding Pop after the Philadelphia game. When it's been all about development, and then they lose that close one to Philly, and you could see how much he wanted to make the playoffs, and so I don't know what that has to do with going forward, but it's all very much still about winning with this franchise, of course, and as you pointed out several times, Mike, and from a development standpoint, you got to constantly look at Keldon Johnson. I mean, what a revelation he's been, the way he's played, and that's got to be a great sign for the future.
This gets into a point that a lot of people like to argue about across the NBA and especially kind of among Spurs fans over the past few years, as to this either or choice between development and winning. And the Spurs have always, I shouldn't say always, over the past few years since Kawhi Leonard left, have contended that winning is part of development, and that you might as well, like, there's no reason to just stop trying to win and start playing kids and saying that, okay, we're now turning off the try to win button and turning on the development for the future button. I think even when Pop and Brian Wright and whoever else was giving interviews throughout the hiatus leading up to the bubble, we're all saying that this is all about development for us. Of course they wanted to win. I mean, there's no... Greg Popovich in 2 decades of coaching this team has never not tried to win, and he just can't help himself. And after that Philadelphia game, it was abundantly clear that he was just lamenting this missed opportunity, and that they were right there. If they win that Philly game, they're the favorites for the 8th seed right now, probably. And we've covered a lot of ground in just these last 5 minutes from the future LaMarcus Aldridge to Keldon Johnson to what the Spurs are trying to do. But I think the overarching theme here is that, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there's more positivity not only about the Spurs present, but about their future than there might have been a week or two ago.
I think that's fair. It's also only been 4 games, and I think there is something to the fact that the Spurs showed up looking nothing like they did in March, and the first couple teams that they played didn't really know what to do with that. I think maybe you're seeing in the past. I mean, they're playing better teams as well, better competition. But I think you're seeing in the past couple of games teams kind of being a little more ready for how to attack what the Spurs are showing them. But all that aside, yes, I mean, Lonnie Walker's looked good. Keldon Johnson's looked like Bernard King, according to the Spurs TV guys. Right. So, you're seeing Derek White has been probably the star of the whole thing for the Spurs. So you're seeing that core you're seeing that core going forward coming together. And as we've mentioned on previous podcasts, you're going to add more talent to that through this draft. And there's also, they've still got some guys kind of waiting in the wings. That they've got a Luka Šamanić, which I don't know what he is, except for he's super young. And if he turns into something, he could be part of this too. So you do look at their youth, and you see the makings of something where maybe you didn't before.
Yeah, and it's different whenever we've talked about over the last couple of years, kind of about the concepts, that like the idea of Lonnie Walker as a contributor, the idea of what it might look like for DeJounte and Derek White to play together, the idea of what Keldon Johnson could be. What we've seen over the last 4 games is a more tangible kind of representation of what the future of the Spurs might look like. I think we kind of were imagining it before, and now we can kind of see what they want to try to be. And it's not a perfect team, obviously, and there's still the question of how and if DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge fit into it. But I think if you're a Spurs fan, one of the encouraging things about this whole bubble restart is you're getting to see what your team might be trying to do over the next couple of years as it moves into the next era that we've all been talking about for a while.
They're going to need a star, though. The stars still win in the NBA, and I don't know if that comes from somebody that's already on the roster, if that comes from someone you draft, or where that player comes from. But you do. It does look like you've got a lot of good pieces, but still probably when you're looking a couple of years down the road, maybe not a centerpiece. Where does that person come from?
To poll the panel here, and I've already given away my feelings on this in the past few days, but if there is a star on this roster that ends up becoming a regular all-star in the 2020s, who's that guy? Nick Talbot.
Oh, right on the spot.
Well, you've been quiet for a while. Yeah. Okay, Keldon Johnson for Nick Talbot. Any explanation?
I just think he fits what the modern-day NBA is looking for in a star more than any other pieces. Just long, athletic. He's shooting better than I thought he would. He's just very active, and I think he fits the mold for what a star in the NBA is a little bit better than, say, a Derek White who's missing a couple pieces here, or a Lonnie Walker who's missing a couple pieces there. I think he fits what can be, but we're still projecting a little bit more on him because we've only seen him for 4 games, where we've seen the other guys a little bit more. Instead, we haven't seen these guys that much, and we were kind of projecting this lineup together. But outside of everyone, I think we've seen Keldon the least. So maybe he's the easiest one to project because there's still a lot more projection with him. But I like Keldon if I'm going to pick someone.
I'd go with Keldon too, but I don't want to go as far as to say a regular all-star. Just need to see. It's a small sample size, and there's a lot of growth that still needs to take place, but certainly the potential is very, very encouraging.
Jeff?
I mean, how do you not go with Bernard King? I mean, that guy was like a scoring champ.
It's part of this is the newness of it. And
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
college football, the NFL in Texas, they said the most popular guy on the team is the backup quarterback, and Keldon's still kind of that. He's the sixth man now. And this, I mean, they're throwing out Bernard King on the broadcast from the TV guys who we all know and love and are great. Jeff's just kind of mocking because he loves.
I think that was actually Sean Elliott that made that
Yes,
comparison.
who we all mock because we know and love. One role that he could fill, and this is not a apples to apple comparison, and this is a Hall of Famer we're talking about. But I mean, if you're going to start this lineup that they're starting now with Lonnie Walker, Derek White, and DeJounte Murray together, and Keldon Johnson is going to continue to come off the bench and provide energy and do a lot of things in like a 6'5", 6'6" frame. I don't want to compare him to a Hall of Famer and the most popular player in Spurs history, but if he wants to fill some version of the Manu Ginobili role, I think that's kind of what he's shooting for. I mean, if he could be that guy for them, what a huge asset. I mean, maybe that doesn't, like Tom said, maybe that doesn't turn him into a regular all-star. But Jeff has mentioned this even on podcasts prior to the restart, looking at Keldon Johnson and how he fits in a uniform and just his NBA-ready body. Like he's more able to withstand some certain things, it seems like, than skinny guys like DeJounte Murray and Derek White and Lonnie Walker, who are all immensely talented and they're great. But Keldon Johnson just seems like a grown man in a way that those other draft picks have not in recent years.
I'll tell you what, if Keldon Johnson develops into Bernard King with working ACLs plus an American Manu Ginobili, I think we can say the Spurs won that Kawhi trade, finally. I
mean, what kind of ratings would this podcast get if I said, he could contribute like a Malik Rose type numbers or something, something totally blasé. I mean, you have to shoot for the outlandish. That's what makes money in this podcast game, baby. You need to say ridiculous stuff. And by the way, like, when we're talking about making money for this podcast, subscribe to the Spurs Nation newsletter. It is yes, I'm talking about making money, but for you, the listener, it's absolutely free. You get Spurs news into your inbox every day from Jeff McDonald, from Tom, Ringo Starr, Orsborn, all the latest updates, analysis, what have you. And yes, if you do have a few extra bucks, just a few extra bucks, subscribe to expressnews.com, where you have all your Spurs coverage, sports coverage of important things going on in the world. You're supporting local news. It's what we need. Yeah, come on. Make this podcast worth something. You're not going to continue to hear me compare guys who played 4 NBA games, who were drafted at the bottom of the first round, to Hall of Famers if you don't support us a little bit. If you want more of these outrageous takes, do your part. Like Greg Popovich says, everyone in America needs to do their part by taking this pandemic seriously and showing some discipline. Like, if you can make a small contribution by supporting local news and this podcast, we would really appreciate it.
Listen to Billy Mays over here. Jeez.
I'm just saying, people want enthusiasm in podcasts. This is what I've read. They want enthusiasm. They want outrageous takes, unrealistic comparisons, and they want to hear more about Tom Orsborn's salmon-covered coffee cup and if he has it in his vicinity right now.
No, I do not. It's at another secure location that is pretty much empty right now. But I have another coffee cup here, Mike, and it's another one that I cherish. So,
well, last thing I'm going to ask you, because I know you have a gig, Ringo. How do you think the rest of this restart's going to go? We're basically halfway through it. There have been 4 games. There's 4 games left. Yeah. Hope is alive. Is a playoff spot a possibility?
I don't think so. Not looking at what's left. Pelicans, Rockets, Jazz. It's a tough road. They're acquitting themselves well, but just finishing these games is going to be an issue because of what we pointed out, the rebounding and the matchup issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, we talked about the roller coaster. They've been up and down through these first 4 games of the restart, and there was a brief moment there where you thought, wow, they're going to do it again. They're going to extend the longest postseason streak in basically major professional sports to 23 years, and now it looks like the odds are against them again. Jeff, you mentioned you had done some, or were going to try to do some research as to the NBA's position on that streak itself and whether qualifying for the play-in game, meaning finishing ninth and then losing that play-in tournament, does that qualify as extending the postseason streak, or does it not? And what's your opinion on that?
The latest, I can read you the latest text I got from my guy at the league when I asked him that question. If the Spurs were to make the play-in game and lose, does that count as extending the playoff streak? The answer is, oh heavens, I don't know. My guess is no. I'll find out, and that's where we've left it.
I think it's.
But
it probably shouldn't, right?
I would say it should not. No, this is a one-off thing. I mean, people have made the comparison to like the NCAA tournament that now has play-in games, and those teams are allowed to count that as a tournament appearance.
Yeah,
and that's fine for those teams. But that's also become an annual fixture of the NCAA tournament. This is a one-off thing in the middle of a pandemic that's never going to happen again, and it would just be it would be cheating, in my opinion.
Another difference there, not to get too far into the weeds, but a lot of those teams that go to the NCAA tournament playoff games actually won their conference and just got pushed into it, and would have made it anyway. So it's kind of it's apples and oranges there.
Yeah.
But my feeling on it is the playoffs start when 8 plays 1.
Yes.
And 9 versus 8, that's not really the playoffs. Also, even if they get into that, they're guaranteed to have finished the season with the losing record. Teams with losing records do make the NBA playoffs, but this wasn't presented as a goal before the season started. It wasn't a possibility then. It was just thrown into it in the middle of all this, and I don't think the Spurs would want to hold on to a streak that came with that huge of a asterisk anyway. It's always kind of been just something the outsiders talk about. They don't go around putting signs on their arena saying 22 consecutive playoff appearances. The streak is still amazing no matter what. But I think for it to truly be prolonged, they need to be in that 8 versus 1 series. Right.
The point of the play-in is to make the playoffs. And if you don't win the play-in, then you're not in the playoffs. And so therefore the streak, it gets semantic when but could you call it a postseason game? Not a playoff game, but a postseason game. And then now you've extended your string of postseason streaks to 23. Even if you've not extended your string of playoff streaks to 23, it becomes very semantic if you want to, fans want to go that route. But my opinion is no, do not count that.
Well, I think this has just been a great podcast because there's been enthusiasm, there have been controversial takes, and then we finish it with semantics, which is what all listeners love, is a discussion about semantics of like playoff verbiage. And so
what I love is having to set an alarm to do a podcast. That's what I like to do.
I think it's you're more productive when you get up earlier.
I'm going to go. I did not have my Polar Pop because I don't need the caffeine because I'm going to go back to sleep after this.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody involved in this podcast
Don't be disingenuous.
For honoring Ringo's schedule here by getting this out there for our listeners who want to contribute, who want to be part of this, who want to just support great products like this and the actual good work that the other part of our newsroom is doing that actually means something. And so thank you all for listening. Thank you all for subscribing. And until we see you next week, take care of each other and keep it real.